Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. There is a new player in the world of action cameras and it goes by the name of the DJI Osmo Action 4. If you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you will know that this channel is pretty much built around bringing you guys the absolute best possible point of view action camera footage that you can possibly get on a dirt bike. That's sort of why the channel blew up all the way back in 2019 and it's still one of the biggest things that I focus on to this day. I'm constantly trying to find ways to make the experience more immersive for you guys, whether it's with new audio, new ways to mount the camera, new accessories, or obviously the big one, new cameras. Up until now, GoPro's been the main workhorse of the channel. I started off with the GoPro Hero 7, worked my way up to the 9, the 11, and finally, most recently, the 12. And 90% of the videos on my channel were filmed with one of those GoPros. I've also gotten a chance to try out the entire Insta360 line, starting out with their 1RS, the X2, X3, the Go series, and then finally, most recently, the Insta360 Ace Pro. So I have a lot of cameras, a lot of experience with all of them, but I'm not gonna lie, since I picked up the DJI Osmo Action 4 a couple of months ago, I have not even touched any of those other action cameras that I just mentioned. That's how good this thing is. And I really should not have expected anything less. If you guys are unfamiliar, DJI makes some of the absolute best drone cameras in the world, along with a bunch of other really nice professional camera gear, such as gimbals, microphones, all sorts of stuff. So it only makes sense that their action camera would be just as good as everything else they make. So why did it take me so long to dip my toes into the world of DJI? Well, honestly, it comes down to the price point. And not what you may be thinking, it's not that this camera is super expensive, it's that it's super inexpensive. The least expensive action camera that I own is $100 more expensive than this thing. Some of them are all the way up to $200 more expensive. So when I saw that the Action 4 was only listed for $299, I obviously thought to myself, well, it's probably not even worth it. There's no way it's as good as my $500 action camera. Well, silly me for thinking that way, because that could not be less true. This has easily become my most favorite camera that I own, and in my opinion, it's the best one that I own. And I'll put my money where my mouth is. You can scroll back through my channel. This video right here was the first time I used this camera, and every single video since then has been filmed on this camera. I love it that much. And you know what? The more I use this camera and the more I thought about it, the more that low price point actually makes sense. Action cameras are supposed to be tiny little durable things that you can, throw down a flight of stairs or bury in dirt or throw it out of an airplane. And the more expensive these things get and the more little doohickeys and gadgets and flip out screens and stuff that you put on these, the less likely you are gonna be to get those really cool shots that action cameras are supposed to get. When you think about an action camera, what is it that you want? Something small, lightweight, durable, repairable, and hopefully cheap enough to where if you do destroy it, it's not too bad to replace. And that is exactly what the Action 4 delivers. So talking about the form factor, this is the smallest and lightest weight camera on the market right now. When I have this thing mounted on my helmet, it's almost unnoticeable, which is really nice. Action cameras are just getting bigger and heavier, and I've started to notice the weight of other cameras on my helmet, but not with this one. It's essentially just a tiny little durable brick. It doesn't have any little flip out feet or a flip out screen that you'd be worried about snapping off in a gnarly crash or something. And touching back on fixability, the lens actually has this nice little cover that completely unscrews from the body. Super easy to replace that if it ever gets damaged, which is super nice, especially on a dirt bike when you're racing pro nationals and stuff. That roost can absolutely destroy those lens covers. So the fact that this one is super easily replaceable is mega for motocross. Some other great features before we actually get into the image quality of this thing. The magnetic quick release mount on this camera is one of my favorite things about this thing. In today's world where you're trying to make as much content as possible, the more you can streamline the process, the more likely it is that you're actually going to get things posted daily or, on a good schedule. And if you guys have an action camera, you know how much of a pain it is to undo that thumb screw every single time you want to move the camera or put it on a mount or whatever. The magnetic mount on this thing is super reliable. I've never had it fail, and trust me, I put it through the gnarliest conditions in pro motocross that you can possibly put a camera through. Super easy to connect and disconnect. And actually, my favorite thing about the magnetic mount is that you guys know how difficult it can be to get the angle of your camera right on your helmet. Nothing's worse than when you go out for a full day of filming and you get home, get on your editing program, and you see that the angle of your camera is all wrong. You're either pointing straight at the sky or straight at your front wheel, and that's that's just a bummer. You gotta throw the footage away. Well, the brilliant part about the magnetic mount is that once you do find the perfect angle, you can lock that thing down with a screwdriver. And when you disconnect your camera from that magnetic mount, the mount stays in that perfect orientation, so you never lose it. You never have to think about angling your camera ever again. You just leave that thing angled exactly as it is, and you are good to go every single time. That also makes it a lot easier to adjust settings once it is mounted on your helmet. Super easy to pop the camera off, make some adjustments on that back touch screen, pop it right back on, and you're good to go. But actually, with the new front touch screen on the Osmo Action 4, you don't even need to remove your camera at all, because you can just adjust everything right on the front screen without moving your camera or removing it from your helmet at all. That's something that no other company offers. Super awesome that the Action 4 offers that. Another great feature is how easy it is to go from horizontal filming for things like YouTube or watching it on a TV to vertical filming for things like Instagram, TikTok, or any other platform that on your phone that uses vertical video. Camera itself does have the magnetic mount right on the bottom, so you don't need to use an external case on this thing, but it does come with a case that has both a mount on the bottom and on the side. So if you have the Action 4 in the camera case, it's as easy as this to swap it from shooting horizontal to vertical, and you don't need to purchase any extra mounts or anything like that. Awesome. As far as image goes, this thing has everything that every other action camera has. 4K, 120 frames per second. You can do some really high quality slow-mo stuff. Here's my dog just being a dog in ultra slow-mo. I normally use 4K 30, and the quality is absolutely phenomenal, right on par with any other action camera, or in my opinion, honestly, a little bit better. It actually has the largest sensor on the action camera market as well, with a 1/1.3 inch sensor. So better image quality, but what that really means is that it's gonna be a lot better in low light scenarios. For racing on a track, maybe not a huge deal, but for the trail riders out there, that's gonna be mega for you guys when you're going in and out of the trees. You've probably noticed that with other action cameras, it gets really like grainy and the stabilization doesn't work as well when you're in a low light situation. But with the updated larger sensor in here, that means it can let more light in, and that means that the quality in low light situations is way better, stability is way better. So especially if you're a trail rider, you're gonna appreciate that larger sensor size. So image quality, 2 thumbs up for me. For me personally, the most important thing about an action camera is how wide of a field of view I can get. And currently the Action 4 has the largest field of view of any action camera on the market at 155 degrees. Having a really wide field of view makes it look like you're going a lot faster because you see some movement of the handlebars, you can see the legs coming in and out, and you just really get a good sense for how gnarly riding a dirt bike is. But it's sort of difficult with a really wide field of view because you can get some really crazy distortion around the edges of the camera. This has an anti-distortion feature built in, and I don't know how they do it, but even on its widest field of view, it still looks like a flatter, nicer image than some of the other action cameras in a narrower field of view. So the anti-distortion that they have built into this thing is really good, and that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to try it out. And as you guys can see, it's capturing everything, my entire handlebars, all sorts of movement, and the image still looks really nice. So super, super happy with the field of view on this thing. I mentioned low light stabilization has been improved on this thing, but just stabilization in general with the Rock Steady is absolutely phenomenal. Trust me, there is no ride in the world that's gnarlier than a professional motocross racer, and these cameras make the ride look absolutely smooth. They even have a Rock Steady Plus feature, but just the standard Rock Steady has never given me any jitters or any sort of bounciness or anything. So I leave it in Rock Steady, and that's enough to completely stabilize a professional motocross racer. So I dare say it's gonna be enough to stabilize most things out there. In the settings menu, this camera has everything you would expect it to. You can adjust the sharpness, noise reduction, exposure settings, ISO, all sorts of things like that, which for most people is probably not super important, but for me, I utilize that stuff because I like to use ND filters on my cameras. DJI makes some really nice ND filters that just slip right over the standard lens cover on this. And essentially what that does is it lets you lower and lock in the shutter speed to give you some really nice motion blur, which you guys may have noticed in some of my most recent videos. And I'll show you the difference on the screen right now. So this is what it looks like completely standard. Pay attention to like the spokes on the wheel and the ground, just how it looks very pixelated. and then swapping over to the ND filter with a locked shutter, everything just looks really smooth and fluid, and you get that nice motion blur. So side by side, you can see the one on your right just looks way more natural and kind of mimics how your eye actually perceives things. And if we freeze both of them, you can tell that the one with the ND filter, there's motion, even though the camera is stopped. You know, you can see the ground is whipping by you, you can see the wheel is moving. And then the one on the left, you almost can't tell whether the bike is moving or whether it's stationary. So ND filters are great. DJI makes some really nice ones for this camera. I highly recommend picking those up if you want to take your footage to the next level. Color quality has also upgraded on this thing. You can now shoot in 422 10-bit. So the standard color settings are really nice, and that's primarily what I use, but it is a nice feature. They included a D-Log-M setting on this, which, if you're unfamiliar with cameras, it kind of makes the picture really flat, but it retains a lot more color information, so that if you're somebody who likes to go in post and edit the colors, or maybe you find a really good preset that someone else has created, the picture is gonna end up looking quite a bit nicer if you use D-Log-M. And that finally brings us to the audio, which on action cameras, audio is famously terrible. One of the biggest selling points is that these things are waterproof, which is great, obviously, but that does mean that it has to have a waterproof microphone. And turns out waterproof microphones are not that good. That's one of the biggest things that I've been trying to improve upon on all of my action cameras up until this point. I've tried a bunch of different external microphones, and it can really be a pain in the butt to hook up an external microphone to these cameras. For whatever reason, every other action camera requires you to use a little plug-in dongle in order for an external camera to work with an action camera. And first of all, that requires you to remove the little waterproof door to access the USB-C microphone jack. So once you use an external mic on most action cameras, the waterproofing no longer works, which is a bummer in itself. Then you have to plug in this big dongle into the camera. And if you want to use a nice wireless mic, you have to then plug the receiver into that dongle, somehow mount it to the camera, and then finally you can use the wireless microphone like I have on my chest right now. Well, I can very excitedly say that that is no longer the case with the DJI Osmo Action 4. As I stated earlier, DJI actually makes some really nice microphones. I'm actually using one on my chest right now. This is the DJI Mic 2, and as you can see, that's what's picking up the audio in this video. Transmitter's on my chest. I have the receiver mounted on my Sony a6700 camera, and that's how I'm able to get this great audio. Now, the amazing thing that DJI did, they added the Bluetooth capability for this Osmo Action 4 to connect directly to this transmitter here. Absolutely mind-blowing. I have no idea why it took so long for an action camera company to do this, but wow, is it amazing. It requires no additional dongles. It just wirelessly connects right to it, so the waterproofing still works perfectly, and it is so easy to connect. So here I have my DJI Mic 2 case, comes with the receiver and 2 transmitters. I leave this left transmitter paired to my Action 4 at all times, but when the transmitter is in the case, the Action 4 is not connected to it. So right now, if I were to start the camera, I would still be using the onboard microphone of the Action 4. However, as soon as I pull the receiver out of the case, we'll give it a second here, boom, automatically connects to the camera. And now the Action 4 is using the audio from the wireless microphone instead of the onboard microphones, and that is so sick. This is by far the easiest way to get really good audio on an action camera, and currently this camera is the only one that has the capability to do that. And honestly, it turns it into like the most awesome little travel vlogging rig that you can possibly get. For example, I went hiking at Lake Tahoe while I was out in California for the first couple rounds of the Pro National Series, and I did a race recap where I just had this camera paired to this microphone, and I just went for a hike. And because of the wide field of view, you can hold it this close to you and it captures everything around you. The microphone is great no matter how windy it is, because you have these little furry microphone covers that block out all the wind. And of course, filming yourself can be a little bit embarrassing if there's people around. So if you're in an area where there's people, you can easily just tuck this thing right into your pocket. It's not like I'm carrying around my ginormous Sony camera. It has the auto start and stop on the top with the 60-second pre-recording like I was talking about before. I mean, I think honestly this thing is epic for vlogging, and it kind of makes this thing the do-it-all camera. If I was starting my YouTube channel tomorrow and I could only pick one camera, this is absolutely what I would choose to do it, because not only is it small, light, and rugged so that I can put it on my helmet and do professional motocross, but it also has incredible good stabilization and audio for vlogging if I needed to do that. And there's actually a bundle on the DJI website where the camera will come with one single transmitter. You don't get the case or the extra transmitter or receiver, so that makes it really affordable and just such an awesome little setup. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's why this camera is my new ultimate favorite. I'm being 100% honest, this is my new workhorse on the channel here. Probably almost every point of view video that you guys see from now on is gonna be on the Action 4 until something else releases. So obviously I had some sample footage in this, but if you're curious to know what it looks like out on the track, probably my last 6 videos have been filmed on this thing. I'll link one up right now if you wanna go check that out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.